Welcome back to the weekend. Now, some feelings of joy are too strong to hide. That was the case for Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts when he learned that J.D. Vance was Donald Trump's vice president. Roberts called Vance an outstanding leader, adding, quote, his selection solidifies the reality that the critical issues President Trump has highlighted and worked tirelessly to address over the past decade are not fleeting concerns. They are the foundation of the new Republican Party. For years, Vance has commended Roberts and the foundation for, quote, incredible work on conservative policy. He even wrote the foreword for Roberts' new book. So, if Trump wanted to distance himself from Project 2025 so badly, why did he pick a candidate who so fully embraced its agenda? Joining us now, New York University professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. She's the author of Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present. Also with us, MSNBC political contributor Erin Haynes. She's the editor-at-large of The 19th. Welcome to you both.
Ruth, I want to take Michael's question there because I think it is more than rhetorical. If Trump wanted to distance himself from Project 2025, why would he pick J.D. Vance?
Well, it's actually a common authoritarian maneuver to, you preserve the illusion, the plausible deniability, the illusion of innocence for your base. And it's like the good cop, bad cop. And in picking Vance, you really couldn't have picked someone better suited if your goal is to wreck democracy, because, as you mentioned, he's very close to the head of the Heritage Foundation. He's an admirer of Orban, who was a model for Project 2025. By the way, Hungary was just ranked the most corrupt nation in the EU. So that gives us a sense of where things are going. But Trump wants to keep his, illusion of being for the people and only for the people. So Vance is a useful tool for him.
Ruth, I guess, well, Erin, I'll throw this one to you because I'm a little bit stuck on something right now, and you're close to the ground on a lot of these things. I want to play a little bit of sound from Vance on Project 2025 from July 11th. Take a listen to this.
This is the craziest fear tactic they're using right now. I think most Americans couldn't care less about Project 2025. I reviewed a lot of it. There's some good ideas in there, Rob. There's some things that I disagree with. But most importantly, it has no affiliation with the Trump campaign.
Okay, so I'm just going to call that a lie straight up. All right, and so just so we get past the pretense that there's no correlation or connection, because we got Trump on tape talking about and bragging about Project 2025 being the foundation of what he's going to do in this next administration. But here's the rub. What I'm hearing now, and my good friend Brendan Buck and I were talking about this with Alicia and Simone in the last hour. How does this translate? This is a 900-page document. Are people making much more of Project 2025 than they need to, that people generally won't care? As Brendan's saying, this is a fear tactic. It means nothing. There's nothing to look at here. How should the American people be consuming this blueprint for the second Trump term?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is a direct correlation between Project 2025, and the direct correlation is literally now Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. But you're right, there was no mention of Project 2025 in J.D. Vance's acceptance speech for the vice presidency on Wednesday night. I was on the ground in Milwaukee, and I was certainly listening for and looking for signs of Project 2025, and they were nowhere to be found. I think that we know probably why the former president is attempting to distance himself from this 900-plus page document, because as voters learn more about it, they don't like what they're learning, right? So it's kind of the same playbook that they're using on abortion, really kind of trying to keep that out of the convention conversation. They kept it, it's something that the former president does not mention very much on the campaign trail. You didn't hear J.D. Vance saying anything about abortion on that convention stage. But, it's still on the platform, even if it was not on the convention stage last week or on the campaign trail in the current moment. And I think on my podcast, literally the amendment this week, I'm unpacking what is in Project 2025 and how it does overlap with Agenda 47, which is the platform that former President Trump has put forward. So there are definitely similarities between those two documents. There's overlap between, the authors of these two documents in terms of people that were in the former president's administrations, many of whom were the authors of the chapters of Project 2025. So again, as people are learning more about it, I think it's becoming clear what the relationship is between former President Trump and Project 2025.
Let's put the authors up on the screen so the people can see it, honey. Some of the people that, some former Trump officials linked to Project 2025, Paul Dans, he's the former OPM chief of staff under Trump. He's the Project 2025 director. Rick Dearborn, former deputy chief of staff. Russ Vaught, okay. Gene Hamilton, Ken Cuccinelli, my bestie. Dr. Ben Carson, Tom Homan. He's also not on this list, but he was on that convention stage. Author of one of the contributors to the DHS chapter as well. Ruth, I fundamentally believe that when we use terms such as fascism, authoritarianism, maybe even dictatorship, folks hear that and they say, I'm not talking about political professionals. I'm talking about everyday regular folks who are working sometimes 2-3 jobs to just make enough money to put food on the table to feed their families. When they hear that, sometimes I believe that they could think it's hyperbole. The people are being just a little bit dramatic. You say Viktor Orban's a dictator, but isn't he in NATO? Things like that. So are people being hyperbolic about this? I don't think we are, but from a historical perspective and someone who studies this, break it down for folks why many of us are right to be concerned.
Well, there's the record of what Trump has already done. He tried to overthrow the government. He staged a violent coup.
Talk about it, Ruth. Make it plain. Ruth is like, well, make it plain for the people, Ruth. Yes.
I mean, like a third of my book is on military coups, and I didn't think that it would be relevant to the United States, other than the United States having backed coups in Latin America in the Cold War. But this is somebody whose record speaks for itself. And, in Vance, he's found somebody who said that he would do what Mike Pence wouldn't do, that he would have done whatever was possible. This is a right-wing extremist, Vance, who has said we need to have a different kind of government, and any means to that end are acceptable. I also want to shed another light on another point of connection with Project 2025, because one of the pillars of it is deregulation and privatization. And that's what the billionaires who are backing Vance and Trump want. It's not just that they want tax cuts, because the dream of authoritarianism is you take away the rights of the many, like reproductive rights and voting rights, and you give the cronies, the oligarchs, as they're known in other countries, unlimited liberty to do whatever they want and pay no price because you've removed all the regulations. And Peter Thiel, the fascistic billionaire who funded not just Vance's Senate campaign, but also his venture capital firm, he's famously in favor of privatization. So there are concrete agenda items that are part of Project 2025 and are also part of this choice for vice president.
Here's the thing, Erin Haines, I think it's one thing to hear that from Ruth. I think it's another thing to hear it directly from J.D. Vance. Here's some sound of J.D. Vance. This is back from September of 2021 on the Jack Murphy Live podcast show. Take a listen.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And then what do you do at the Department of Education? Well, you do what Viktor Orban has done in Hungary. You actually just, I think, go down American institutions and make it possible for conservatives to actually govern and succeed in these institutions in a way where they're currently cut out.
I mean, my goodness, Erin, it's like fascism bingo. Fire all the mid-level bureaucrats.
It's like
it's Project 2025.
These are all of the agencies right here. Project 2025 got them on a list, honey.
Listen, Alicia,
also the
Simone,
talk of our people, Erin, the shout out to Viktor Orban. Again, it might not land from Ruth, so just listen to what J.D. Vance had to say for himself before he was ever even chosen as the vice presidential pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alicia, Simone, I hear you. You got the receipts. I see Simone literally holding up the receipts. But the reality is this is GOP remix, right? I mean, like I said, I was on the ground in Milwaukee in the convention hall listening to, Republicans like J.D. Vance and former President Trump literally trying to recast what the Republican agenda is about, that they are the party of democracy, that the threat to democracy is really on the other side, that they don't know anything about Project 2025. There was no mention of the January 6th insurrection on that convention stage, even though there were certainly people in the audience wearing T-shirts, supporting the January 6th insurrection, or hostages, as former President Trump has called them. So, they don't care about what was said before. Obviously, J.D. Vance does not care about what he said before, even about his now boss. So, regardless of what people continue to pull up, they're going to say, don't know her, don't know anything about that. Where I am now is what you need to be listening to and paying attention to. But I think it is important to continue to point out previous statements, previous actions, and really the thing is that there is a record. There are receipts out there that can be pulled up each and every time they try to kind of remix and recast this message for a more general election audience that maybe wasn't paying attention before.
The remix when the original was bad in the first place. Erin Haines, thank you so much for joining us.